Hello and welcome to the review of the day for Never Let Me Go by, I believe he's Sir Kazuo Ishiguro, which I'm probably mispronouncing. I've never been able to speak much Japanese outside of an old anime film or two. So normally when I do a review for a book, these days at least, I'll go online, I'll do a little bit of research so I can give some background on the author, who was nominated for the Man Booker Prize, I believe, on this, which he'd won previously, and a whole heap of other ones. At least you need to check these days if there's some major controversy or online scandal or TikToky whatever thing. You need to check those, otherwise you'll wander into controversies by accident, and that makes everyone unhappy. I started to do that for Never Let Me Go. I stopped. I came to this book cold, and this is specifically for the novel. I know there's a movie out there. I can tell because look at this cover. That's clearly a movie. But I haven't seen the movie. I didn't know anything about it going in. I'd never heard of this book or of the movie. During my huge November book haul, which was a hell of a lot of fun, someone I was shopping with said, "Have you read this?" and held this up. And I said no, because I'd never heard of it. And they said it's really good. I got it sight unseen based on their very able recommendation. And I didn't ask too much about it. I just said, I read the back of it, and I said, it is science fiction, isn't it? Because I couldn't quite tell from the description. And my friend said yes, so I took it. I have just finished this book and I absolutely adored it. I couldn't put it down. I loved every second. I reread a couple of bits, thoroughly enjoyed it, very glad to have read it. But this just highlights how much mood really influences me as an omnivorous reader. If I feel like a type of book, reading something else doesn't satisfy. And this wasn't the first time I picked up Never Let Me Go. I've picked it up 2 or 3 times since November. I'd open it, I'd try to get into it. I couldn't get into the pacing. I was impatient with the slightly wistful, reminiscent tone of the writing. It wasn't for me. This time it was exactly what I wanted. I wanted something that felt modern. I wanted something with a strong character. I wanted empathy because Aldous didn't have it, and I just finished the Heliconia series. Going into this cold was really interesting. I knew nothing about it, and I have to say that having done that, I feel that every other form of reading this is going to let you down a little bit, because this is a layers within layers book, and if you've already gone online and you've read what it's all about and that it's dystopian, etc., etc., and it tells you exactly what's happening, I feel that slow layered reveal that I enjoyed so much about this book is going to be missing. So let's assume that, like me, you know nothing about this book. I will eventually spoil her, but I won't for a while. You start off with our main character, Kathy. It says England, late 1990s, which I actually missed when I first started reading it. I went straight to the matter of it, part 1. However, we start off with Kathy. Kathy tells us she's a carer, and she's telling about the fact that she's coming up on 12 years as a carer, which is a long time. We don't really know at this stage what a carer is or much about Kathy, except that she's got a background from something called Hailsham, and she's talking about her caring and what she does and the donors that she takes care of. It's all very clearly her experience and empathetic, but the details are fuzzy. So you understand what she does as a carer, but not why it's necessary. You understand that these people who are donating, it's dangerous, and one gets the impression that maybe sometimes they die, but it's not spelled out for you. You gather that Hailsham was a bit of a privileged background, but you're not quite sure what it was. And yet you progress in this experience of Kathy's as she talks about it. And I was totally hooked early on. So Kathy's in the here and now for her, but she's reminiscing a lot about the donors she's taken care of, especially two that you gather were personal friends that she'd known for a long time back at Hailsham, whatever Hailsham was. And you feel like you're on a precipice with her. She's about to stop becoming a carer. And at first you don't really know what that means. Then as you keep going through, you hear more and more about Hailsham. It sounds like a really, really exclusive boarding school, but there's something weird about it. And you know that there's something weird from her reminiscences and what she doesn't reminisce about. You understand that their cohort was unusual. They clearly had no parents or home life. They were just based in the school, but you don't know if it's an orphanage or caring situation. You're not really told anything except what Kathy herself knows. And that as the book progresses, you realize that what Kathy and the other students didn't know was more significant than what they did. And as a teacher has a bit of an outburst later in the story where it says, you know and you're told, but you don't really know and you're not really told. Great stuff. Now from here on, if you don't know what this book is, or you haven't seen the movie and you're going to, from here on, it's going to be mega spoilers. So if you, like me, you were naive and innocent and you didn't know what this was all about, get this book. I suggest that reading it cold is the absolute best way you can do it. And it is very, very well worth reading. It is subtly dystopian. It is subtly futuristic, whilst managing to be nostalgic at the same time. And it's creepy. It's got a creepy element that is never given to you as creep, but it's a creeper up your spine. And from now on, it's spoilers. So slowly throughout this really nice book that only I got through in just 2 or 3 days because I couldn't stop, we find out that Kathy and her whole cohort in Hailsham are brought up as separate years. There must have been heaps of them because originally there were 16 per year in a dorm, girls and boys separated, and then they go into senior huts with less, 6. So there's this continuous overflow. Now by the time Kathy ends her story, Hailsham's been closed and for a while. But when she was going there, cohorts would leave and move on to cottages and new cohorts would come in. We find out that they're not people like the teachers or everyone else. They're clones. And they're clones that have been created specifically to be donors. And what donors mean is that you finish school, I think at 16, you haven't really been taught much. There's a lot of art. There's a lot of art and crafty and there's a lot of debating poetry. But you early on realize that they're not being taught the things that a normal school would teach, and they're not going out into the world in a normal way. From the school, and Hailsham is only one of many, many around the United Kingdom. In the 90s, there's some in Wales and there's some down in Dover. And apparently Hailsham is one of the better ones. It treats the children there like real people. Apparently some of the others don't. They've been bred from donors that they never know. I got scrapings of the movie The Island when I was reading this. Individuals that have been created to provide spare parts, essentially. They're called donors and they give donations, but we understand, and we're never really told what that is entailed. Are they donating whole organs? I'd suggest quite possibly, because it seems that surviving 3 donations is rare, and after 3 or 4 you might be complete, where complete means you're dead. They've taken everything and there's nothing left for you to be alive. Though later in the story you find out that some donors are terrified that they're kept on life support and just keep on going through it over and over again, even when they're no longer walking, talking, functioning human beings. And honestly, you as the reader, or Kathy as the carer, we can't discount that, because the level of inhumanity that's being proposed is already such that you can't seriously trust that there's worse levels of inhumanities waiting out there. Now, when people leave the schools like Hailsham, they get sent to cottages, which are like open and living environments where the kids go into, I think they're a year or two, maybe 17 or maybe 20, they are taught to become carers. The carer will take care of a number of donors. They'll do small things for them, like they'll ferry them to appointments, they'll take care of personal details, laundry. One doesn't really ever have that spelled out. But one carer, like Kathy, will have a number of donors around the country that she's taken care of. So she's considered to be in a privileged position because she's got a little bedsit unit of her own. She's got a car. She can drive around the country. But carers often don't last for very long. Some of them can only do it for a few years. And once they cease being carers, they become donors. So basically they're taken apart, organ by organ, until they're dead. We hear a lot about Hailsham and Kathy's close friends Ruth and Tommy. Ruth was one of her cohort of girls. Tommy was a boy who was in school with them. And the details are what build this up to be an incredibly rich and emotive book. And we end up seeing all of them and the school and the events throughout their life, and then we end up seeing Kathy as she is in the now, caring first for Ruth and then for Tommy as they finally get taken apart for spare bits, caring for them as they get slowly slaughtered. The wistful element is always there, and you've got this huge level of acceptance. And the acceptance is the bit that is actually the most creepy, but also the hardest to swallow. You'd think that after 12 years of watching people slowly being cut into bits until they die, some element of rebellion of I can escape this might arise, but there's no suggestion of that ever. Somehow all these people have accepted the fact that their only purpose in life is to be put into multiple surgeries until there's nothing left of them, and to care for other people who are going through that. And that is dystopian, and that is suspenseful, and that is creepy. It is also totally alien to my nature. And I read way too much dystopian not to keep waiting for the moment where Kathy goes, I don't have to do this. I've got a car. I can drive all the way to the north of the United Kingdom and stow away on the boat and off I go. But no, she never thought things of doing that. There's no particular way of telling a clone is a clone and not an ordinary human being. You'd think that someone would have tried it. There's no element of that anywhere. So this element of dystopian, creepy inhumanity is manifest throughout, and it peels back like an onion. Going in cold, I think I was this far from the end before I realized they were actually clones, or at least that far from the end before the word clone was used openly. You don't know where they come from. You don't really know how they came to be there. At some point earlier on, after they've left Hailsham, when they're living at a cottage, someone spots someone who might be a possible for Ruth. And we gather that that's the donor, but the donor who provided the genetic material from which she was cloned, but nothing's ever spelled out. It's always this amorphous cloud that hovers over you while you're reading. Anyway, not a lot of background from this one. Backgrounds that I started to read didn't do it justice. The slow development of the characters and the slow description of the school are fascinating. The slow learning of what a carer really is and what a donor really is and where they come from and where they're going to end, which is when they're complete, they're gone. Great book. Thoroughly recommend it. If you've watched all this and you haven't read it, too late to go in cold. You should have gone back when I said spoilers. If you have read it, tell me what you think. I'm a little bit curious about how the movie plays out. I gather it's absolutely heartrending. The book is heartrending at the same time that it's horrifying. And yeah, just what I wanted to read when I read it. Thoroughly recommend it. Very glad I read it. 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know who won the Man Booker Prize instead of it. They must have been very good to beat this one, is all I'm saying. Thank you for watching. Read good books.